All right, I think that we are going to go ahead and get started. All right, so today we are going to discuss our Tab Compliance Manager, and we're going to tell you how this service can simplify your compliance requirements. And then we're also going to show you a live demo. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to our presenters today. Today we have Eric Semmel, who is our Vice President of Client Success. We are also joined by Richie Cohn, who is our Senior Server Engineer and is very versed in our Compliance Manager, and myself, Rebecca Altamar, who is the Learning and Development Coordinator. Eric, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
All right, so what is cybersecurity compliance? So if you're in manufacturing, if you're in any kind of finance or you're in accounting, you need to make sure you've got your stuff together and protected correctly. So it's an ongoing process of improving your business security posture. You're going to need to align with security policies based on your industry standards, frameworks, whether it be PCI DSS, whether it be NIST, whether it be CMMC. These are all frameworks that have been established over the past, let's say, half decade or longer if it's SOC 2, that goes way back, to actually having your industry try to be compliant to protect your customers' data. And of course, then in effect, your own company reputation. It's going to reduce risks because you're going to actually know more about your systems and those gaps that are out there and the vulnerabilities that are out there by actually assessing where you stand pretty much constantly. You kind of have to know how good you are on a daily basis because the bad guys only have to be right once. So you need to be constantly vigilant to protect yourself. And of course, you want to eliminate violations. This is where the data that should have been protected would have gotten out, which your prime or your customers would consider a violation. You were trying to eliminate that so you're not embarrassed. Cyber attacks are a huge problem. Why is this important, right? Cyber attacks are a constant thing, and they're currently continue to be on the rise. So the idea here is if you work on implementing these frameworks, you're going to have less chance of having a cyber attack happen to you because you're going to follow the proper processes and procedures within the compliance frameworks to protect your business and its data. In some cases, you're going to be able to avoid fines that might be set down by the folks who are implementing or putting these compliance requirements on you. FTC, for example, they like to fine you if your data is breached. CMMC and NIST, right now there is no fine yet if you have government data that's breached, but excuse me, we can assume it's coming. Obviously, you also want to build trust with your customers. Um, you don't want to have, the Pratt and Whitneys, the Lockheed Martins, the Sikorskys of the world not send you those parts to work on because they've heard of your company as being part of a breach. So you want to build trust with those customers. It's really not an option anymore. Microsoft, I contend, caused this problem. They built this operating system based on ease of access and ease of use, and it did not base it on security first. And so we're all now in this industry over the past, you know, 30 years trying to figure out how to lock everything down, and it's really not an option anymore. So you have to focus on security, not just the operating system with Microsoft, but your firmware on your firewalls, your workstations, your access points. Everything has to be up to date and patched because they're all secure until they're not. The issue is a vulnerability can be located and found by the bad guys at any moment. It's called a zero-day vulnerability, and if you're not up to date and patched, uh, you don't know what you don't know. So it's really not an option these days. They've set some deadlines. The FTC has said you had to be compliant by 2023. So if you happen to be an auto dealership or a financial organization or what have you, these rules have to be in place, and are already in place now a year ago. PCI DSS, you have also just missed that deadline if you're not compliant, if you process any kind of credit cards for your customers. CMMC 2.0 is supposedly October 25th. We've seen these deadlines move when it comes to CMMC and NIST. also October 25th. But again, the government is becoming much more serious about this, as are the primes who a lot of our clients are getting work from, whether they be, again, manufacturing components of a submarine or a helicopter or an airplane. And so these are the frameworks that are going to apply. And our compliance manager tool actually covers, I think, nearly 75 different frameworks. But the ones that come to mind the most in our client base and maybe in your daily life are these typical frameworks. So the idea of a framework is basically, again, a guideline, it's a policy, it's practices, and it's constantly changes. It's not just a set it and forget it static framework, because even the people writing the frameworks don't even know what to think of next, or what other aspect they should be considering, or you should be, or tell you to be considering. So if you think of it as taxes, every year the tax law changes, usually not in our favor. And in this case, when it comes to compliance, same idea. The compliance requirements are going to change within each framework, and you need to be able to stay up to date on these things. And our compliance manager allows you to both manage where you are and where you're going. So you're not just constantly trying to figure out what the new changes are. It's all built into our system and updated in real time. So here's the key here. Here's what you must do. You need to identify what you have to comply with. It's kind of your job within your industry to know where you have to comply. And then, of course, implement those controls and procedures to comply with industry laws and regulations. You have to discover where you fail, because there's going to be gaps in where you actually think you are and where the laws say you have to be. And that's, again, the beauty of the compliance manager. It kind of tells you where you stand. So an auditor can kind of come in and say, okay, I see you're about 80% here, you're about 20% here. Here's are the areas you need to work on, and understanding those gaps are really important. And then, of course, you have to monitor, because, again, these changes are going to come down at you from within your industry, from whoever's setting down these requirements, and you just can't set it and forget it. You have to keep. It's going to be a living, breathing thing going forward within each of our industries, including our IT industry. So we're eating our own cat food and have to do the same thing. We have to be compliant as well. There is no industry standard specifically for us, but we've chosen one, the CIS compliance framework, to become compliant in ourselves. So we're not alone in this pain, but it'll be good for everybody as far as protecting both our clients' information and, of course, your customer information. So here's the journey. Got to assess where you are. So the beauty of our approach to our support for our clients is we can help you with that assessment as far as our service, and folks like Richie will help assess your existing systems. We'll create a baseline for your policies and your procedures and controls, and kind of determine a path forward. Again, the compliance manager will help organize all that, and you can assign all sorts of folks to actually implement different areas within your business to deal with those policies and procedures. It's not just a one-person job. And the beauty of the compliance manager is you can assign HR to do their pieces. You can assign maintenance to do their pieces. You can assign whoever to do each aspect of the process. It doesn't have to be a single person. You're going to identify the gaps, and then you're going to try to deal with remediating them as quickly as you can, and implement those things. You're going to audit to continue to see if you're up to speed. And you can use third parties to log into the compliance manager to actually, again, look at the layout. It's very clean. Helps them quickly understand where you are. They're not trying to figure out anything. It's all right in front of them to help with any kind of third-party audit. And then, of course, they can offer any advice as to closing any of the gaps that they find. And then here's the monitoring piece. The control of the system, all those controls change. So you're going to see, when we show you the actual compliance manager tool, all those different aspects of the framework, and they will change. The requirements will change. Someone who is in charge of creating these compliance frameworks will say, well, we should probably do this instead of that. and the tool will actually update to the current changes that happen and help you maintain and monitor those things. So it's kind of redundant. Who needs compliance? Frankly, everyone does. Maybe unless you're selling hot dogs and ice cream. But if you use a credit card, guess what? You need to be compliant. FTC safeguard rules, CIS controls, which I brought up as far as one of the things that TAB is focusing on for ourselves. HIPAA with healthcare, obviously we've known about that for a very long time. Any kind of work with government contractors, CMMC, DFARS, all those things. Manufacturing is also NIST and CMMC. Any company that stores any kind of sensitive data, right, that you wouldn't want to escape your company's control. I used to say four walls, but now with the cloud, you have to also monitor what you've placed in the cloud, even if you can. And again, it can't escape the cloud as well. So there's additional work that has to be done to safeguard that type of technology. But basically, everyone needs compliance, and it's something that's becoming more and more focused on by your customers and by the government as well. So why use our tool, right? There's lots of tools out there. People used to do this. There's a CISA tool that's free, right? CISA is a government agency that started in 2018. They have a tool that we actually had listed on our website for since 2018 as a free tool you could download. It's kludgy and clunky. People use spreadsheets and they try to combine this spreadsheet or that spreadsheet. Our tool automates it more. It's again like the TurboTax of compliance. It's going to kind of show you where you stand, help you automate the process. It's going to help you actually with evidence collection. You have to show the auditors that you are doing what you say you're doing. You have to collect evidence to do that in the form of reports, in the form of evidence that shows the technologies that are in place to protect it. And it actually has interfaces that'll, in some cases, automatically collect that evidence, so you don't have to worry about it. But that's why it's the automated portion of it. But it's going to put it all in one place for you, and it works wherever you are. There's templates, there's procedures to jumpstart compliance, no matter where you are in the process. Whether you're using a bunch of spreadsheets that are now already getting old and you want to just move them into the compliance manager approach, you can start from wherever you are in your current journey and then get running forward using the compliance manager tool so that you don't have to which spreadsheet, which version did I save, who's working on that. The compliance manager is going to help organize that for you. And of course, we're going to be your partner. We're going to work with you on the cybersecurity side of things, making sure that you have the proper tools, whether it be security awareness training or whether it be MDR, EDR, proper backup, two-factor authentication. All that has to be implemented on the cyber side, which is about 40% of compliance. And then there's the 60% of compliance, which is all your internal processes and procedures and policies that you have to come up with as an organization. And the compliance manager actually gives you a lot of templates that you can actually use. You don't have to think of them yourself. It's written for you. You just have to fill in your company name and then, of course, follow them. So yes, minimal in-house compliance work. It's already there for you. The framework is set up. It shows you where you stand. You don't need to guess. You can show the owner of the company, your manager, hey, yes, look, this is where we stand. This is how we're doing. We try to simplify it. Everything's pretty streamlined so that you can kind of get an understanding of what you need to do and how you need to do it. And then, of course, as the compliance frameworks change, the requirements are updated automatically real time. So it's finally a tool that we've all been waiting for a very long time. As when CMMC and NIST was kind of talked about half a decade ago, we should have been all. By the way, we should have been all compliant back then, and we're still not. So lots of us have a lot of work to do to get our houses in order, and this tool can really help you do it affordably. So we're going to let Rebecca drive the demo here to show you a little bit about how this looks.
Thanks, Eric. That was a lot of great information. And we're going to connect the dots on a lot of what Eric mentioned, meaning frameworks and your policies, procedures, and how you collect your evidence. And Richie is going to help me run this demo. But when you first log into your compliance manager, you're going to see an overview of the frameworks that you're working on. And yes, you can complete multiple frameworks at the same time. This particular account is working on a NIST as well as a CMMC. So the great thing that the compliance manager does is that it takes the different parts for each, the different frameworks for each
It combines both
thank you.
frameworks, controls.
Thanks, Eric. That's exactly
It's
what I was
okay.
going to say. So as you're going for one, you're actually taking the information from one that you're doing and it's applying it to the second one. So there's no need to have redundant information happening. It all connects it together. So it really is a seamless process. So if we look at each individual framework, you can see that it breaks it down into what we are currently working on. It gives you a great look of your SPARS score for both. And as you can see, our SPARS score are the same because it takes both the information for each framework. So this just breaks down your overview a little bit more, giving you an idea of where you've started your evidence, what is in progress, what you need to review, completed, and not applicable. As Eric stated before, there's multiple people that could be collecting the evidence or creating the policy or reviewing a procedure. And this is how other people in the organization help to make this process simpler. And then by giving you this great dashboard, you can see what is needed to be followed up on. We were having a conversation before, and Richie mentioned that this is the place that everybody lives in, which is objectives. So I'm going to let him just talk a little bit about objectives and why this is so important.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, this for anybody that's working on NIST 800, 171 or CMMC, this would be the area they'll be living in. And if starting off with our favorite control 3.1.1, when you click on that and tree it down, it'll show you different parts of what you need to accomplish there. Like Rebecca mentioned, it's going to come down to a policy, procedure, and evidence. A good example, even though it's not 311, a good example of a non-IT would be visitor policy. You could have a visitor policy. Any visitors that come in must be logged. That's your policy. Your procedure would be, okay, when a visitor approaches, they must sign the book. They must be escorted by an employee. They must be assigned a visitor's badge. And then your evidence would be actually scanning, taking a copy of the visitor book itself and put it into Compliance Manager, and that will show the evidence that you're actually doing what you're doing. So if you could think of those three things that all work interchangeably, that would cover all 110 objectives that are here, and each objective has several sub-objectives as well. But that's all shown here with the implementation. Responsibility is a good one too. That will show who's responsible. In that case, it would be ABC Manufacturing is responsible for maintaining a visitor's log. And then anything that TAB would have to be responsible for, we would put in there. If it was a password policy, TAB will establish a password policy and enforce it with group policy within your servers. And then the other tabs here are the evidence, policies, procedures, and the crosswalks are what Rebecca mentioned. CMMC aligns with 800, 171, and that they call it a crosswalk or cross mapping. If you have an evidence document, can we jump out here, maybe just go right into evidence, Rebecca?
Yeah.
If we go into evidence, you'll be able to see the objectives on the right-hand side, which evidence document is assigned to which objectives. So instead of having to remember this particular policy goes to these 3 or 4 different objectives, they all kind of tie together. So it's a one-stop shop. You make one change and it's covered across the board. The only thing between the 800, 171 and CMMC, the documents will follow each other. You just have to go in and do an extra checkbox saying that you're compliant. But that's nice about the cross mappings, that they could serve over different frameworks. And when NIST 800, 171 Rev 3 comes out, which will be probably this fall, because it's already in the final rulemaking, there will be another framework here. It will be NIST 800, 171 Rev 3, and you should be able to do what's called a jump start and more or less transfer the information from this 800-171 Rev 2 to Rev 3. That would be it's called a jumpstart procedure.
Mhm.
But that's how it all kind of more or less interfaces.
So if I go ahead and I click on one of the evidence, you would have to go ahead and just follow what they're looking for here. So we want to upload and maintain completed background checks for new hires. So some of this is information that's going to be uploaded all the time. So something that you kind of just have to think about and do within your daily process. And then some of what you're going to be collecting are policies, procedures that might need to be updated or reviewed or looked at yearly, quarterly, every 6 months. Richie, does that depend on what is required for the framework that you're working on, or is that an internal policy that you would set?
That would be an internal policy that you set, but there are several documents that you can look at. Of course, with the government, every document you look at, there's 3 or 4 reference documents, and you click on those, and there's 3 or 4 under those, and you may have to dig a little deep to see what exactly the government may want. For example, password policy. In most cases, they don't have those set in stone. The government kind of wants you to figure out on your own, more or less. But when it comes to an auditor, when it comes time for different evidence in other procedures and stuff, they want it relatively fresh. They don't want something that's a year or 2 old. They want fresh evidence, fresh whatever. If you could go back into that top evidence document one more time, Rebecca.
Yep.
So say we have a corporate policy that says every 3 months we have to scan new hires. Bad example. But down here you can see there's a refresh schedule. So you can set this up, assign it to somebody, and say every 3 months, Richie has to come in on this date and refresh this evidence document. So again, I know we're talking about a background check here, but to get back to my visitor's log, you can say every 3 months, Richie has to come in, get a screenshot of the visitor's log, upload it, sign, click complete, and then it's going to tell me on both my calendar and via email when that's ready to happen again. So once everything gets set in here, you're pretty much just following your procedures and updating your evidence documents, and you won't be living much in the objectives at that point. It's just going to kind of more or less run itself, notifying the responsible person, whether it be for a policy, procedure, or evidence, when it's due next. And if you can click out of here, Rebecca, and you click on home, you'll notice my work and teamwork. There's a couple different views there. There's a tab view, and there's also a calendar view. So anything that's assigned to you, you go up just a little bit more, Rebecca, to the top, right above the action items. If you show calendar view, whatever is assigned to you would come up in the calendar saying, so you can say, okay, Monday, I have 3 evidence refreshes I have to do. And you should get email notifications on that as well. But you could assign the work to multiple people. You could have people just watching. I would suggest to have someone higher up to be watching to see how things are progressing, because after all, the higher up, usually the CEO or whatever, would have the final responsibility of a particular audit. But you could just be a watcher. You could be a contributor. There's different levels of access permissions. You can set up with users as well. You could have the ability to let them create policies, maybe just edit policies or review policies. So it's pretty finite as far as when people get in what they could do. So it's nice, like Eric mentioned, once this is set up, everything's there, and it's going to run itself and just tell you what it needs once everything's in there, which will take some time get everything in. And when everything changes, the framework will be up to date as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it like the book Atomic Habits, you have these little changes that you're going to set for yourself to actually become compliant. So once you've done that, the system then helps you attain and maintain that compliance in an automated way, rather than having to run again spreadsheets or remind yourself or, oh, what did I do here? You'll always know where your compliance lies. So if someone is like a CEO, like Richie says, and says, hey, Bob, how are we? Are we compliant? Then you can show them, yeah, here we are. And if you're not doing the updates and the evidence gathering, then it'll show you that too. So it's really going to help you live and breathe that compliance and try to attain and maintain it in a more systematized way that hasn't really been out there other than very expensive tools. Now with Tab, everything is focused on affordability with us. That's how we've started 42 years ago and are continuing going forward with this. We have a very large client base and a lot of seats that we support. So we're able to pass on that economy of scale to our clients so that they're not paying an arm and a leg for this technology. We want you to become compliant. We want to help you get there, and we do not want to charge you an arm and a leg to do so. So you'll be pleasantly surprised as far as the cost of accessing this tool. And you'll be able to get there, which is the key. Getting there is finally attainable with a more simplified tool.
One other useful area too, if you could go into frameworks, Rebecca.
Mhm.
And you could select either the CMMC or NIST, go under the overview. We already looked at the overview. If you look at the action items, this will show you anything this is more or less your poem. These are things that have to be accomplished. We may not have any data in there. But if the CFO or CEO wants to say, hey, why are we so far behind? This is going to come up with all the action items. And not that you have to rat somebody out, but it's going to say who's responsible for that. So if people aren't keeping track of those background checks or visitors logs or whatever other policies you have there, you're going to have a name there, and it's going to say, you know, what's due, what's the due date, when's the next due date on that. It all gets laid out right in the action items. And if you notice, there's also next to action item, there's a SSP, your site security plan, which allows you to start putting that. Normally this is like a 30-40 page document, which would include scoping your environment for CUI for CMMC users. But this will allow you to build your, everybody has to have SSP, and this helps you build it as well. But like I said, the big thing is action items to see, you know, why is our score low? Who's responsible? You know, when's it due? Is it overdue? Maybe we need to get a couple more people assigned. And that will also, you know, help you move things along.
And we've also partnered with another organization, MSI, who has been heavily involved in ISO work for the past 30 years. So they can also assist within this partnership that we have with them to work on those aspects of compliance that are not cybersecurity, but more policy driven. And so we have a nice partnership where we can refer those folks to help you as well as consultants, so that you don't have to do it all on your own. And the reporting is pretty powerful here too as well.
I did want to touch on policies and procedures just a minute. Because as we've been talking about, everything is connected. So you can see that we've got our controls that are related to this policy and our objectives that are related to this policy. And then policies, procedures, it's the writing of them, it's the compiling of them. Well, our tool gives you canned policies and canned procedures. And you would just need to come in here and update it as necessary. But if this is an approved policy, the way that it's written, then you can just adopt this policy. And you actually would have to adopt it, though, throughout your organization, right? You can't just check the box and be like, yep, this is done. You do have to adopt them. But it helps to get your security posture started quickly, but also started in the right way.
And that's where the evidence comes in too. So if you don't accept the policies, you don't have any evidence, you really aren't compliant, and the auditor will catch that anyways.
Correct.
And there is a lot of built-in evidence that's already assigned to the different objectives, and is also crosswalked as well, where they felt there should have been some evidence of, you know, some type of security gathering or whatever. If you can click on evidence, Rebecca, I think it comes with like maybe 60 built in or something, 40 built in, and they're already assigned to the multiple objectives. If you're running more than one framework, people really should be doing the CMMC and NIST at the same time, more or less, because NIST is the framework that really exists, and CMMC is still, they're still writing and reviewing the final rules.
Right, and that'd be for the manufacturers out there. But if you're doing FTC for, you know, if you're an auto dealer and you want to be FTC compliant, same idea, or you're, you know, HIPAA, PCI DSS, same idea. All this that we're talking about here, looking at these two frameworks, still applies to those frameworks as well.
And you would have the same menu to guide you through your process. It wouldn't be any different.
And there
If
is one
you're
other, I'm sorry.
good, that's okay, go ahead.
I was one other thing about NIST. Our state of Connecticut legislature did create kind of a safe harbor for companies who are breached, but actually are working on a NIST compliance. So even if you're not mandated to be compliant, our legislature has said, hey, if you go ahead and are working on becoming NIST compliant and something happens, the penalties and fines could be less. It doesn't get rid of the embarrassment of being breached, but any financial impact might be lessened because you at least were trying. So keep that in mind too, that if you want to become more cyber secure, working within this technology helps you think of it that way as any type of organization, and you would just leverage NIST.
I know that we're nearing our time, but there's just a couple other things that we should touch upon, and then we'll see if anyone has questions. We did talk a lot about automation, and integrations is definitely a way that you can automate a lot of the data that's coming through here. I know that Tab's done integrations with Duo. Richie, have we done any integrations throughout our other clients?
We have several clients that already have the Duo implemented. And we recently implemented our configurations from our RMM system. And it's just a matter of if people are ready to accept those assets, then we could implement them as well. And as we go to each client for our next visit, we kind of talk about that. But those are the big interfaces right now for the integrations.
Right,
Is
there,
the
right there, the
Duo.
Microsoft 365 GCC would be a very important integration.
And also under the HR one, Rebecca, I believe if you go under HR system on the right-hand side, I think it shows you a whole bunch. So there's 18 different HR systems that you could actually extract the your employee information from, with interfaces with those 18 so far.
And this helps to just keep your users up to date, because for auditing purposes, they're going to want to know the start date and then end dates for any employees. So not having to come in here and update all of your employee information and just having it update automatically is yet another advantage of the tool.
Lots of breaches occur due to past employees whose credentials have not been deprecated.
Yep. So the other thing is reports. I think reports are great to have. It kind of gives you an idea of where you are and where you stand. You can schedule reports out so that you're always aware of what's happening. And then you can create a bunch of new reports, and they have many canned reports that you can schedule, or you can just run on a one-time basis. And Richie, is there one report that you would like over another that you think gives like an overall view of what's happening?
I would say probably the poem report would show you the most detail of what still needs to be done. But there are many reports in there for the assessment reports, or objective reports will show you what's done and what's partially done or what's in review. But the
Right.
poem would be once you get all your data inputted and you go into the framework and say, okay, this isn't done. When you say this isn't done, it's going to pop up, say, hey, do you want to add an action item? You say, yeah, that's security awareness training. So let me assign that to Rebecca. Boom, I click that, and then Rebecca gets assigned the security awareness. So as you go into the objective, if you say no or partial, it will prompt you. I don't know if you want to show that real quick, Rebecca, if you go into frameworks and you go into objectives and pick our favorite 311 and just like say no to the top one, or second one down, say no.
Oh, I think I took the pop-up off. Is
Oh,
there
did
a-
you? Okay.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
think I did. Yeah, that's fine.
It,
But
it's a little annoying, but the first time through, it's nice.
it is. It
Uh,
is.
But that will let you say, okay, I know who's supposed to do that. Let me assign that right now, because we really should get working on that. And you can put the responsible person there, and it will go into their calendar. They'll get an email saying that they've been assigned. And then anybody that's a watcher or anybody that's a manager could come on in and see where they're at.
So these are the action items that are associated with this particular control. And then, so if we went into action items, we would see these, correct?
Yeah, those should appear.
Okay.
I think we went into NIST last time, that's why the action items didn't come up, so there's a few examples right there.
So then
And
this is, go ahead.
Yeah, so under action item down towards the bottom, that's where you put responsible person. And you could even put in the responsible party, and that should show up, that way you can see who's supposed to do what. So if you just type in like RE right there, you should show up Rebecca. And then you could assign a priority right then and there. You could say it's partially done, or not started, or discussed, or reviewed, or whatever.
And your
And then
score
we have-
changes depends on all those settings, correct, Richie?
Your score would only go up if you met an objective. So if it's an action item, that usually means it's not done.
Gotcha.
So your score will go up as you, and for the NIST CMMC people, I hate to keep dwelling on that, but that's a majority of, even the recent conference that was done last week, it was like 90% of the questions, it was all CMMC. With the SPAR score, there's 3-point values assigned, a 1, a 3, and a 5. So you may want to take a look at the 5s first, if you go under the frameworks, Rebecca.
Yep.
And you go under overview, we've got to find that SPAR score, maybe assessment.
System.
No, it's under, it should be under frameworks. We should get the main menu. There we go. All right, if you click on the SPAR score, it breaks down, it'll tell you each category, what point value is assigned. So the 5s are obviously the most important. Those are the ones that could get you the SPAR score the highest. The 3, you got the 1s, the 3s, and the 5. The 1s at this point in time were the only ones that you could allow a poem on. So if an auditor comes in and you have a 5 on there, and you'll go back to the visitor's log, you say, yes, I maintain a visitor's log, show me. Well, yeah, we're talking about that. If that's a 5, that's it. They won't even come audit you. So if you want to work on your score, you could start with the 5s, the 3s, and the 1s, and that will get you help you out with your SPAR score a little quicker. But this breaks it down in case you forget which is which. You click on that SPAR score, and it will break it down. It'll show you the point value of all the 110 objectives.
Pretty straightforward and simple that way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Focus
this
on
is
the most
nice.
impactful stuff.
Is there anything else that you think that we should demonstrate, Richie?
Well, without going into total detail, that's a pretty good overview, I would say, for a starting point
I
For
think
for the
so
time
too.
we have allotted.
I think so too. We could break here for a minute and see if anyone has any questions on the portal itself that we could go into a little bit more detail on. If you have questions, you can unmute yourself. All right, if there are no questions, we will continue. There you go. That's it.
Give us a ring if you want to become compliant. If you're looking for help, we can help you, and we can do it affordably. It doesn't have to cost your company an arm and a leg. Obviously, you do have to pay for cybersecurity technologies, but again, with our approaches, it's going to be an affordable approach again there as well. So we think here at TAB, we've come up with a great way to get our clients compliant, should they want to become compliant, and actually allow you to demonstrate it, all for an affordable price to do it. So it's a win-win-win, and you can get there now, and you can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel rather than which spreadsheet am I going to work on. So reach out to clientsuccess@tabinc.com. Happy to come out and chat with you. If you're already an existing client, just let us know, and we'd love to get the program started for you. Everything's available for you. We're always here to help, so feel free to reach out. And I want to thank you, Rebecca and Richie, for the fine work you did.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for
Thank you,
coming.
Eric. Yep, thanks everyone for coming.
All right, bye.